Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Vivek Lal, the chairman of this conference, who has had a very distinguished career with the Boeing and has accomplished extremely well. I give him all my best wishes for the new avatar that he's at present holding here, and all success to him. Mr. Donald Lu, Deputy Chief of Mission, United States Embassy, Mr. Lalit Bhasin, Mr. John Flannery, who is a proud successor of a pioneer who built India-US relationship in high technology and indeed between corporates. A person called Scott Bayman, who used to look after the interest of GE for a long time, and I had the privilege of setting two joint ventures in the 90s with GE at that time. Mr. S.K. Sarkar, Mr. Chopra, thank you, and ladies and gentlemen. I consider it a privilege to have been invited to the inaugural session of a process that is defining the changing relationship between India and the United States. I'm indeed privileged to be amongst you today on this occasion. India and United States of America are the largest democracies of the world. USA has a democratic tradition and vast economy, while India has a large population and is one of the fastest growing economies of the world. Citizens of both the countries have expressed their approval in the working of democratic institutions such as national parliament, state assemblies, and local self-government. People believed in the virtues of democracy. Both the countries are multi-ethnic, multilingual, multi-religious, secular and plural society in which all citizens can live in equality, safety and harmony, and prosper and fulfill their aspirations. Unity in diversity is one of the most powerful characteristics of both the countries. Both are secular according to their constitution, which not only is not opposed to the religious belief, but is fully in harmony with it. Historically, the Indian and US relationship has been strong. This is reflected in the visit of Swami Vivekananda, sage whose 150th anniversary that we are celebrating now, who visited and introduced yoga and Vedanta to the United States. Vivekananda was the first known sage to come to the West, where he introduced Eastern thought at the World's Parliament of Religion in Chicago in 1893. In fact, the phenomenal growth of Indian community in US has contributed significantly to expanding and enriching the people-to-people network. Now the world is recognizing the potential of the Indian economy. Indian economy has been propelled by liberalization policies that have been instrumental in boosting demand as well as trade volume. And I must say that I was a participant and also a witness to this change in gear in the 1991 when India reframed its industrial policy and we moved in towards much greater liberalization than what we had before. US also recognizes the vitality and importance of India to American interests and its redefining every dimension of our bilateral relationship. It is appropriate time that world's two largest democracies work together to carve out new opportunities in the world. It is also a matter of great pleasure that has been a rapid expansion in the economic and trade ties between the two countries. In my view, both countries are natural friends and they can enter a new phase of mutual cooperation to tap each other's potential to move forward. Both have enough scope to broaden the trade between them, and areas of interest need to be identified to speed up the process. With the liberalization of the Indian economy and the subsequent boom in living standards in the Indian middle class, numbers of Indian youth traveling to study in the US and American universities are warmly welcoming them for the cultural diversity and intellectual skills that they bring along. The United States has been preferred destination for thousands of Indian students going abroad for graduation as well as specialized education. India has been endowed with a vast pool of talent. I have been asked to share my thoughts with you about the security segment of this relationship. I'm sure that Dr. Lal had on his mind my professional past and my experience in taking this relationship forward. The fact that we are coming together for the 8th time to continue to strengthen the process in itself is a sign of robustness of our intent and conviction. Let me at outset mention that the area of security is a domain that defines the trust and focus of relationship between two countries. While trade and economy are equally important, yet these are born out of material considerations that become secondary when the core interests of the countries involved are in question. But on the other hand, if the security relationship is positive and healthy, then the long-term interests can be considered to be aligned and the other associated factors of mutual benefit will automatically fall in place. Therefore, security is not just one part of a strategic partnership, but to my mind, it is the crucial part. In this technological and knowledge age, the effort and endeavor of a country to keep ahead of the other in these areas is enormous. It is these capabilities that define the country's security status. A feeling of security allows an unimpeded progress of its people in all walks of life without fear or danger. The niche areas of technology that a country has invested in are obviously protected, and there is reluctance to share these with others. In a globalized world, there is great ease in moving this technology in other areas of civil use as well as also to pass this technology on to other countries. In effect, therefore, when a country decides to share technology, it is considering where they are giving rise to a competitor of the future or the possibilities of these technologies becoming available to a future adversary. Military technology acquires teeth only through human skills that can adopt these technologies to create dominating capabilities. Training, therefore, becomes an equally relevant part of a partnership. I mention this because when security becomes a part of a relationship between the two countries, there is an assurance that the two countries will never be adversarial in the future and the long-term interests of the two countries are the same. There is also confidence in the fact that technology or skills that are shared will never get passed on to the adversarial countries or to adversarial interests. This highlights the fact that USA decided to take the strategic partnership to the level of strategic global security. It also defined the theme of this relationship. It needs to be emphasized that this happened outside a formalized security alliance structure. And this in many ways is unique in its context and needs to be taken into account. Much that I would have liked to talk about the historical evolution of this relationship, I'll refrain myself because I'm sure others will talk about it or link their views with history. More importantly, I restrain myself also because we have moved out of the historical construct and we are at a stage of making history instead of drawing from history. The Cold War is over, the differences on nuclear issues have been resolved, and there is a degree of assurance that the experience of America in South Asia has convinced them of that a hyphenated consideration with India and Pakistan regionally or globally is misfounded. This has permitted India and US to establish a relationship as two independent democracies without the baggage of the past. Let us move on to the fundamental issues of strategic partnership with specific reference to security. The US-India defense relationship derives from a common belief in freedom, democracy, and the rule of law, and seeks to advance shared security interests. These interests include maintaining security and stability, defeating terrorism and violent religious extremism, preventing the spread of weapons of mass destruction and associated materials, data and technologies, and protecting the free flow of commerce via land, air, and sea lanes. Indian strategy has emphasized on pursuing maximum flexibility in terms of security partners, but without diminishing the priorities of domestic development. US benefits immensely with India as a major military power. Future military expansion in India to take up its role as a regional power bids well for the US military hardware suppliers. The US and India have a common interest in the free flow of commerce and resources, including through the vital sea lanes of Indian Ocean. They also share an interest in terrorism and creating a strategically stable Asia. President Obama has called United States and India's relationship as a defining partnership of the 21st century. He feels that the two countries are natural partners destined to be closer because of shared interests and values and a mutual desire for a stable and secure world. What he has said becomes more relevant because there are contrary views expressed when he started his term. This change has come about because of a reality check and an hands-on experience with India over the years. What was once a nascent relationship between unfair exercises, defense trade, personal exchanges, and armament cooperation. The 2005 new framework agreement provided the overarching structure for US-India defense relationship, and I am very happy to be a part of it. along with my partners from the US side. And this framework relationship in the defense relationship has opened newer dimension between India and US. The Defense Policy Group, or the DPG, is co-chaired by US Under-Secretary for Defense for Policies and the Indian Defense Secretary. I have been fortunate to ensure that actual content is provided to the deliberations of this apex body, in addition to merely facilitating dialogue on issues of mutual interest. The DPG today sets priorities for defense cooperation, reviews the progress annually, and directs the changes be made when required. As an example, we prioritize the area of maritime security, humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, and counterterrorism cooperation. Under this DPG umbrella, we have 7 subgroups that discuss issues relating to advanced defense trade, service-to-service cooperation, technical cooperation, and technology security. Our military-to-military relationship actually began way back in 1995. Since then, US-India military exercises have grown dramatically in size, scope, and sophistication. Today, we are regularly exercising across the 3 services to deepen our military and defense relationship. As an example, last year itself, there were 56 such cooperative events across all services, a number that India has never imagined. 40% of the world's oil and commerce passes through the Indian Ocean sea lanes. These are unprotected. Pirates in the Red Sea as well as at the Malacca Straits prey on countries. Indian cooperation will be helpful in keeping the sea lanes free. United States and India continue to build these newly strengthened relationship. To my mind, it is the naval cooperation between the United States and India that has laid the groundwork for military-to-military cooperation. Today there are 4 annual naval exercises that are conducted between India and USA. In one of them, every 2 years, we graduate this bilateral relationship on tactics, techniques, and procedures to a multinational event, which includes some of the important Asia-Pacific countries. A similar engagement has recently started between the Indian Coast Guard and the US Coast Guard. Similarly, the Indian Army engages the US Army in an annual exercise which started as a company-sized field training and has now graduated to live fire exercises at much higher levels. The Air Force also holds a biannual primary exercise. This military-to-military engagement has allowed us to graduate to a level of comfort where the Marines as well as the Special Operation Forces are engaging with their equivalents in India. Instead of going into the details, it would be enough to highlight that professional relationship and familiarity between the militaries of the 2 countries have reached a sufficiently high end level. The United States is India's one of the largest trading partner. Major items exported by India to US includes information technology services, textile, machinery, gems and diamonds, chemicals and steel products. Major American items imported by India include aircraft, fertilizer, computer hardware and medical equipment. Emerging India-US cooperation is in the area of aerospace industry. The high-tech manufacturing industry is at a takeoff stage in India. This sector, together with IT services and BPO with power, the will power the US industry and businesses into higher profitability and help India accelerate its growth. A mutually beneficial synergy between these two could be of immense value to both. Time for exploring the possibilities of joint ventures to optimize individual strengths has come. In fact, when we talk of joint ventures, we could have joint production, joint development. All these aspects also should be considered. Defense sales is another area that defines the comfort zones between the two countries. There is a much greater understanding, reliability and transparency with regards to the ways the defense sales work in the two countries. We have already signed more than 20 foreign military sales, FMS, proposals, and there are more in the pipeline. Some that I recall are C-17, C-130J aircrafts, TPQ-37 radars, self-protection suites for VVIP aircrafts, specialized tactical equipment, Harpoon missiles, sensor-based weapons, test pilot training courses, and many more in the pipeline. In less than a decade, when we started from zero, we have grown to a value of over $10 billion. In this, I am not taking into account large numbers of major assemblies that get supplied outside the FMS route. With regard to defense acquisitions, my overall suggestion would be that there is still a large scope for US and India to educate each other on our respective procurement and acquisition processes so that greater compatibility can be reached. We have to get out of our individual comfort zones of operating to adopt processes that will improve efficiency and make it easier for cooperation in defense trade. We also need to understand that India today has the infrastructure, skills and technological capability to offer advantages of mutual cooperation in development and protection and production of complete defense platforms. Partnership and joint development programs will provide a huge impetus to this cooperation. We need to take into account that India's capability in private sector has also graduated to a level that enables us to robustly participate in the global supply chain. I am expecting that very soon India create policy instrumentalities that allow Indian private industry to partner with over 50 defense labs of the Defense Research and Development Organization. Similarly, some incentives are also likely to come to the R&D in the private sector. We already have areas of cooperation that include power and energy, micro-aerial vehicles, situation awareness, energetic and human effectiveness. This needs to grow immensely, both in quantity and content. The growth of relationship between countries rests on the personalities involved, structures and mutual interest. In the case of US and India, all these are in place. Fine-tuning of the process is an area in which we have to work. If intentions have to be converted to action and progress has to receive the required momentum. I say this because of my experience with the government. When we talk about the government as a single entity, it is actually composed of many departments and disciplines that need to be maintained to ensure delivery of governance. Each of these has a core competence and a focus. Like all the things in life, any situation or issue which would have different perspective and therefore there is a lack of unanimity in a view. To ensure that basic interests of a country are kept in mind and the system is in tune with the constitutional provisions, a set of procedures and rules are a part of bureaucratic functioning. It is true of India, and I am sure it will be true of USA. Democracies operate in this manner. Since defense and security are critical areas of a country, there is always a great caution to ensure adherence to the set rules and guidelines. It is therefore not surprising that while good intention at the apex level may exist, but there is a huge tardiness in actual implementation of agreed bilateral because of this structural dissonance. Therefore, unless we continue to engage at all levels, economic cooperation in defense and security will face some hurdles. I think an example from my experience as Defense Secretary will illustrate what I am trying to convey. This is a case in which we had inducted Embraer, which is a non-defense transport aircraft from Brazil. And the agreement had been many clauses and regarding which had demurrages or penalties for non-delivery or non-acceptance. On the final date, when we were to take the delivery to fly these aircraft to India, I was told that we were required to give additional certifications and undertakings that restricted the use of this transport aircraft. This was a sudden requirement and it impinged on the way that we were to exploit this aircraft. Obviously, this was not acceptable to our Air Force, and we were inducting them for our Air Force as well as for the BSF. I was therefore sitting on some kind of a commercial crisis based on the clauses to the agreement. To cut the story short, it emerged that these provisions had suddenly emerged because of an inertial navigation component that was a part of American manufactured subassembly. And so we took it up with the Americans, and I'm happy to say that issue was resolved in 3 days. But the whole thing was that there were serious problems, and it required dialogue and to set the problems right. So that's the message that I would want to give. In the end, if I was to leave you with what I would consider as challenges that lie before us in the way ahead, let me mention the important ones. The foremost challenge is the internal political dynamics of the two countries that create lobbies to stunt progress of national interest. Our decision making is today impacted by a lack of political consensus. Second is the requirement of a strategic balance between the relationship and sensitivities of India, China and US, so that there is no misreading of a bilateral arrangement. Any source of tension will remain a matter of a long time concern, and this needs to be avoided. We also need to consider co-development of technology and give real substance to our partnership. And last but not the least, the private sector has to be enabled to participate in a major way to enhancing the Indian defense industrial base and linking it with the global supply chain. I am sure that the deliberation on all this and other would be of extremely good use for both the US and Indian interests. My involvement with matters defense and Indo-US relations specific makes me an ardent follower in the process. I look forward to the intense growth in what I see as a promising relationship with both India and USA. I am indeed thankful for having been invited and address. I look forward to learning about your deliberations and final outcomes, and thanks for all the attention. I am confident that summit comes closely on the heels of this development and therefore can play a significant role in bringing the two countries closer to each other and throwing up meaningful suggestions for mutual benefit of both the countries, and will provide new opportunities for improving relations, bilateral relations. In the end, I thank the Indo-American Chamber for Commerce for inviting me. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.